announcements. Remember that we will have a final closing session at the end of the program today, 4:30 I think, with some prizes that you can win. So stay with us until the end if you can. But now we are going to start the presentation of Pingu from Fedora Infrastructure, and he will tell us how to own your infrastructure in the age of heatmap.
So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming despite this being pretty much lunchtime. So I hope you have a sandwich or that you're going to join me for lunch afterwards. So what I'm going to try to do today is to present you a number of tools and solutions that you can deploy within your project or within your company in such a way that you benefit from the current modern workflow that has been introduced by GitHub and popularized by GitHub, but still benefiting from the advantages of doing self-hosting. So owning your infrastructure in the edge of GitHub is not an easy task because there are some very, very big players in the field, and there are a number of reasons why you would not want to use your own infrastructure. Some of these reasons include basically convenience. I mean, if you don't host your domain name, you can use just Gmails, and Gmails works out of the box. It's free. Well, okay, it's free, so how do they make money? If it's free, basically the product, it basically means that you are the products. You are what is being sold. So Gmail is great. It works out of the box for you, but you're the one that is being sold to someone else. It's convenience. It's work. It has calendaring. It has to-do tracking, I believe. It works. You have other big players. GitHub just works. I mean, you could create your project on GitHub. You upload your SSH key, and everything works out of the box. So it's really convenient to rely on existing solutions. There are also cost consideration to take into account here. Having a team of people working in your company or a team of volunteers maintaining your infrastructure can have some costs in the short term, in the longer term. These are things that you, as a project manager or as a person running a company or just a project in general, you want to take into account. You still need to pay for the domain name. You still need to pay for the hosting. You still need to have people that are present. If you're a community of volunteers, that does mean that you will accept the cost of eventually having your server offline when something goes wrong, because eventually the community is not big enough to have sysadmin that are present all over the world and therefore around the clock. So it's a balance. It's something that you would have as a manager. Most often you will look at the numbers and say, well, we can cut down on that expense because we can go to some other places. And then there is the social aspect. I mean, one of the biggest reasons why people are using GitHub, despite the convenience and the costs, is basically everybody is on GitHub. I mean, let's make a raise of hand here. Does anyone in the room not have a GitHub account? I have 3 hands. So, I mean, kudos, guys. I mean, you actually survived the GitHub wave, so that's congrats. You made it. But that basically means that people have GitHub accounts because other people are using GitHub. So there is a social component to that aspect. So one of the things which you want to take into account is basically how big is your community, how big is your company, and look at what are the advantages of self-hosting. So why would you self-host? Well, the first and foremost obvious reason is confidentiality. You don't want to have your information out there, then you keep it with you. You don't want other people to have access to it, then you keep it private. If GitHub has private Git repos, private projects that you need to pay for, but I mean, there are still GitHub sysadmins, there are still people having access to the file system, so in theory, it's not entirely private because other people will have access to it. If you're the only one with the access on the server, you're pretty sure that nobody else is going to gain access to it except for security breaches, of course. The second thing is convenience. The best part about self-hosting, so convenience you can see is both a reason why you would not want to solve, but also something why you would want to host your own infrastructure. So convenience is the self-hosting is really nice because you actually get to pick what you want to host. You get to choose the tools for your needs. You get to compare the different solutions that are present and pick the right one for what you want. And that actually comes to the third point, which is customization. If you get to pick one tool And if it's a tool that your sysadmins or IT team is, let's say your IT team is using Python, because that's what I'm going to talk about afterward. If you deploy a tool which is great, but in Java, they might have a little bit of problems or need a little bit of adjustments to actually customize it to your need, make it, first to get it running, and then to actually adjust it for your needs. And, if you want to tweak it, something, it gets a little bit trickier. And I'm not even speaking about proprietary solution here, where customizations becomes a cost center and not a feature. And then there is the basic idea of principle. I want to own my infrastructure because I want to be relying on open source software because I want to. Because I know it's a cost, I know it's sometimes not convenient, I know it gives me a lot of flexibility, but it's just something which I want to do. So it's also something that, depending on who is managing the project, depending on the spirit of the company or the team, principle can just be one of the reasons why you're owning your infrastructure. So I'm going to talk a little bit about which kind of project I'm speaking about here, because there are a large variety of projects. So when I'm speaking about projects in the rest of the presentation, I'm speaking about community project. But when I say community, I'm not necessarily referring to community of volunteers, which you normally get in most open source projects, but I'm also speaking about the community of employees. I mean, your startup, your company itself is a community, and you all work together towards your goal, which is most likely getting paid at the end of the month. But your community might also involve both. You could have volunteers, and you could have people paid to work on the project. So when I say community project here, I'm speaking about all of these communities. When I speak about source code, I don't necessarily speak about computer programs, but that can also be designs, that can be documentations projects, that can be anything that multiple people want to work on. It could be expense reports for whatever it means. So yeah, I already mentioned some of them. So it can be all these type of projects will have similar kind of needs. And these are the ones which I want to present. When you run a community, so regardless of the type of community which I presented, when you run a community, you need a place where people can discuss. You need a place where people can exchange ideas. And nowadays, it pretty much means emails. I mean, you can have different communication channels. You can have chats. You can have the coffee machines in the corridor. But at the end of the day, what you want is you will want to have an email service. Emails are asynchronous. You can get them whenever you want. You can send an information, and the people will reply when they can. And it also keeps tracks of what was said and who said it when and what. You also want to host your sources, so you actually want to host the core of the project, being documentations, designs, or computer programs. You actually want a place where you do ticketing. So ticketing is really handy because it allows your manager to say, well, we should work on that. And then it allows you to track down, well, these are the things we need to work on. And your manager can go there and prioritize tickets and close some and open new ones. It's also a place for the community to report ideas. We are doing that, and this is not working, but we should do that, and this will work. And then it's also a place where you can discuss change proposal. So basically, this is what GitHub calls pull request, which Git itself calls request pull. And it's just basically, I want to do this change, what do you think about it? And then we need a place where, so we have different tools, we have communications, we have ticketing, we have source code. We need a place where you have account system. You need a place where your employees are listed, you need a place where they can log in to the different tools, and you preferably want something which can cover all of your use case. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the three main ideas here, account system, hosting, and communications, and I'm going to do that in the reverse order compared to what's on this slide here, and start with the account system. So the account system can be as simple as system user. So someone comes in the company, you just create a shell account on the server, and they will use this username and password to log in on the different service. It can be a solution that is homemade. So the Fedora infrastructure is using a program that's called FAS, the Fedora account system, and that's something which is home-baked, it fits our needs, it offers a portal where people can sign in, they can upload their information, and then we go from that account system to the different machines that we run and synchronize information there. It can be something which is more enterprise-like or enterprise-ready. The big names in there are probably LDAP, FreeIPA, which is an easier way of deploying an LDAP, I'm going to say, which has a bunch of bells and whistles, which you probably want to look into. It makes your life a little bit easier. And if you're not in the Linux world, there is, of course, the Windows Active Directory server. So all of these are going to store your username and password, but then you actually need a place where your user can authenticate. And one proposal for this is the Epsilon project. So the Epsilon project is a pretty neat project. It's a Python-based project, so I'm going to specify this for all the tools which I'm presenting. They are all written in Python. One of the ideas being that if you install all of them, you get a certain harmony in the technology which is being used. So there are also solutions. I'm proposing Epsilon because it's a Python project and it fits in the flow here. And so you can imagine Epsilon as being some sort of portal. It takes information on the backend. So the backend is like where you store your username and passwords and user information, and it exposes this information to your applications. And the backend can be any of the classic LDAP, FreeIPA, Active Directory servers. It can be Kerberos system. It can be Apache authentication. So if you do the famous HT password file on the server, Epsilon could just read that file and expose it to the application. It can use PAM. So if you do the first approach which I presented, which system local user accounts to the server, it can be basically anything. Writing your own backends is a simple Python file which has a single function which for a given username and password returns a true and a false. So whatever your account system is, you can just wrap it around a Python function and make it work with Epsilon. And then on the front end, it exposes different protocols. And these are the famous protocol. I think everyone has heard about OpenID. You might have heard about SAML, although it's a little bit less known than OpenID. And you probably have not heard about OpenID Connect because this is brand new. It's basically an OAuth 2 protocol on steroid written by the OpenID consortium. And that fixes a number of the issues that OAuth 2 was bringing on. So you can actually pick or say, well, my company is going to use LDAP backend, and all our applications are going to use OpenID. But then one of your developers needs, I need OAuth 2, so I want OpenID Connect. Well, that's no problem. You can actually enable one of the front ends, or you can enable two of them, or you can enable all of them. So you actually free your developers from the authentication protocols as long as they rely on something which is known and well developed. So if you want to know more about it, there is the epsilon-project.org website, which provides more information. And if you want to, I'm not going to say give him a beer because he doesn't bring a beer, but if you want to give him a beverage, Upstream is wearing the red T-shirt on the back of the room over there. Thank you, Patrick. So the second thing is, now we have account system, we have users, they can authenticate. The second thing is how to host your project. So we need a place where we host our source, where we do ticketing, and where we do change proposal. For this, I propose the Pagure project. Like I said, there are others. This one is Python-based. It uses Git as a repositories, and it has ticketing, it does change proposal via pull request, and it can host the documentation of your project. So since this is pretty much my baby, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this. In general, if you have questions, feel free to interrupt. I might be going through open doors here, but if you have questions first, feel free to ask. So Pagure, what is it? So that's the first question people ask is, how do I pronounce it? I pronounce it Pagure. You can pronounce it however you want, basically, as long as people know what you're talking about. And the idea is it's a French terminology for the hermit crab, for the family of the hermit crab. And the hermit crab is this little guy here that lives at the bottom of the sea. And it's a very small, it starts as a very small, I have no idea what to call that, crab, shell, crab basically, because the shell is the whole trick about this crab. So it starts as a very small crab, and it looks for a place to live. and it looks for a shell, basically. And as it grows, the shell does not belong to him. So it finds an empty shell at the bottom of the ocean, moves in, and then as he grows and the shell becomes too small, he goes to find another shell, and then another shell. So this could actually be, it's 3 different pictures, but in theory it could be the same crab that just grew up and moved from shell to shell. And I really like, when we came up with the word, I really like the idea and the comparison, because one of the main ideas of Pagure is to allow your project to move from a Pagure instance to a Pagure instance. One of the ideas which I had when we wrote Pagure was being able to have 2 Pagure instances in your company, one that is exposing the public information, the public project, and one that is the private project. And the public project are synced to the private instance of Pagure, and your developer internally only work on the private instance, and your community can contribute in the public instance. And tickets and pull requests can be synced from one place to the other. And one way we did that is that basically one project in Pagure equals 4 Git repositories. There is one that is going to be your core Git repositories, which we all are used to, which contains the sources. There is one which is going to contain your documentation. There is one that is going to contain all the metadata of the pull request of the tickets. So basically, every comment on a ticket, every actions made on a ticket is going to be reflected on this Git repo. And there is one that contains the metadata of the pull request. So again, who opened it, against which branch, what were the comments, and where. That also allows for local access of the information. So if you travel, take an airplane or the train, or if you come to DevConf or leave DevConf, you can actually clone the ticket repo and access it offline during the flights. And you could actually comment. We don't have the CLI tool to actually do that right now, but in theory, you could comment to the tickets offline. And then when you find internet again, you just git push, and the UI gets updated from the content you put in the Git repo. Like I say, it could be used to sync project between Pagure instances, public, private, and it's also the mechanism that we are using if you want to migrate to Pagure. So if you come from, so Fedora is running the Fedora hosted project, which is a bunch of track forge, and we are going to decommission that project. And so we are moving people off track and into Pagure. And one way we do that is that we are hitting the XML RPC endpoint of track, generating the JSON blobs which represent the issue metadata, putting that in the Git repo of the tickets, pushing that, and then suddenly all your tickets are moved from track to Pagure. It can also be used to move between Pagure instances, like I said before. It can also be used to move off Pagure, although I have no idea why you would do that. There are 2 things about Pagure also. We have a very strong dedications to actually make Pagure self-hostable. If you want to run Pagure, it is possible. If you want to run Pagure against an OpenID server, it's possible. If you want to run Pagure against using local user accounts, you can actually tweak Pagure. It has 3 authentication modules currently. It has FAS, and the FAS login enforces the Fedora project contributor agreement. So it's ensured that people that are contributing to FAS project have signed the contributor agreements. You have OpenID, which is basically the same thing as the FAS module, except that it doesn't enforce the FPCA. And you have local user accounts. So you could have a public Pagure instance, and then people are just creating accounts as they want, just like GitHub does, basically. And then the second thing is that we are and are moving more and more towards service-oriented architecture, because, well, as the project grows, we realize that doing things in a synchronous way is not always the fastest and not always the most reliable in some ways. So to give you, since we are in the microservice topic, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of how Pagure looks like these days. It looks a little bit messy, so I'm going to try to walk through it a little bit. Is there a pointer? No. Okay, never mind. Let's start from the left. You have the web user, the web user on the left. Sorry? Yeah, there it is. There is a red point. So on that side, we have the user and its web browser. So that's the part that we care the most about because they are the users, but it's a part which is not in our infrastructure. The core of Pagure is basically the core of the application here, the web server. It's a Flask applications. And then this part here has then a number of services. So it starts to the database, it updates it and queries it. And then here we have a second service, which is the documentation server. So the idea, we basically use the documentation server to run it in a different domain name because the documentation is something which is uploaded by the users and therefore not trustworthy. Sorry, folks. To avoid any potential cross-site scripting, we actually run pagure.org and pagure.io. Pagure.org is the documentation, pagure.io being the source hosting. And if you deploy your own instance and you want to run the documentation server, it's highly recommended that you actually do the same setup, so 2 different domains. Subdomains is not enough. You really want different domains. But basically, so here we have, I'm going to throw the different service first, and then I'm going to spend a little bit more, or try to extrapolate on that. We have a milter here. So milter is a postfix filter, basically. So when it allows that when you comment on a ticket in the web UI, it will send a notification to all the people that are subscribed to the project or to the issue, and the user can directly reply to that ticket by replying to the email. And replying to the email is going to go through the milter, and the milter is going to update the database, and the database is going to be reflected in the UI. So basically, you can discuss around an issue directly using your mail client and not having to go to the web UI all the time. One way that we actually, so when someone comments on the UI or via the milter to a ticket, there is the event source server down here that actually sends a server-sent event back to the browser, to the web browser, which means that when someone comments on a ticket, we are actually able to refresh the page live or to add the comment live. So it's actually quite funny because when you have 2 people working on the same ticket, you can see the comments appearing one after the other. So it becomes like a chat system where you just answer someone and then put the next answer and so on and so forth. So it's really nice to see. That works, so the live refresh works on tickets and pull requests, basically where you comment. We have webhook server, which sends webhook notifications. We have a CI service, which is now at the moment tied into Jenkins. So basically when there is a pull request that is created or updated, it will trigger a webhook on Jenkins to start the build. And at the end of the build, it will receive a webhook called by Jenkins to tell that the build was finished. It will then check what was the result of the build. Did it fail? Did it pass? And put that information back into the pull request that started the process. And then we have a last service at the top here, which is the log.com service. And that's the most important service because you know the world famous by GitHub calendar heatmap that shows your activities through the days. Pagure has the same. And that's the one that actually is responsible for feeding commit information for you. So it's really one of the most important services to run. And so the nice thing about this design is that basically every single piece here is optional. Pagure itself runs, if you want to run Pagure, you just run if you want the simplest version, you just run Pagure server and you're done. I mean, you won't be able to host documentation, but that's a configuration key. You won't be able to have webhooks notification, but that's also a configuration key. You won't be able to have Jenkins integration, again. You won't be able to have live refresh of the page, and that's fine. I mean, the core experience about hosting your project is here. And one of the things that we are doing about how to integrate with Git is that we actually rely on Gitolite, which is well-known, well-tested, and I know it's the only piece of Perl that's going to be in this presentation. But I had at one point the idea of maybe moving away from Gitolite and use our own module that would directly look into the database if you have the permissions to push or create branches and so on. And actually, someone was like, "Please don't do that," because one of the benefits that he was saying in Pagure was that it was relying on existing technology. So if you already have a Git server internally or in productions, you can basically put Pagure on the top of it and it's not going to change the experience for the people that are already using your Git server. So that's a little bit how it works these days. Some of the features, so I've already mentioned a few of them. You can reply to tickets by emails. We live refresh the page on tickets and pull requests. You can do self-registration, and it's basically a self-service. So if you do local accounts to Pagure, you can do self-registration. You can create your project. You don't need anyone to create a project for you. It just works there. You have a new project button, and you're done. It has the calendar activity heatmap, which is very important for manager because they show you what your team was working on. It has notification via webhooks, but also via fed message, which is a message bus. So instead of having an HTTP endpoint that waits that waits to be called, you can just listen to the bus and react on events there. You can flags pull request. So that's basically the same idea that GitHub has, which allows third-party integration to your pull request. So basically, Jenkins integration is done by a flag. At the end of the Jenkins build, the Pagure CI is going to flag the pull request saying this service said it was 0%, so it was a failed build, or it was 100%, it was a successful build. The idea of using percentage is that it allows for things like to report coverage if you want. It allows to report, for example, instead of saying 1, 0, test build, test fail, it could actually tell you which percentage of the tests failed and which percentage of the tests built. So 99% of the tests were successful, or 98% of the tests were successful, and that gives you an idea of how much broken your pull request, how much you broke the wall with your pull request, more that way. You can tag issues, and the idea of tag is that you can actually then filter by tags, and you can combine tags. Filtering, you can filter by multiple tags. You can exclude certain tags from your filtering, and then when you're done, you can actually save that in reports so that it's easy to share the link with people and you don't have a URL that is 5 kilometers long. So that's a few of the features. There are some more. I'm probably forgetting some here, but just to give you a little bit of an highlight. So where we are now, we have accounts, we have authentication methods, we have our source hosting. What is missing is basically a place where we can discuss, a place where we can announce change. There is a new version of Pagure where we can support outside of tickets. So someone trying to do something doesn't want to do the tickets, just I'm trying to do these things, could you please help me? And for this, the main answer is most often emails. And for that, I would propose you the Mailman 3 suites. So Mailman 3 was released a couple of years ago. It's the new generation of the world-famous mailing list program, Mailman. It's Python 3 based, which means that while the other two are actually Python 2 based still. And it's designed around a core, Mailman core, which talks to the SMTP server and exposes a REST API, which is then consumed by 2 Django applications, Posterius, the admin interface, and Hyperkitty, the archive interface. So this is basically how it looks. You get the SMTP server that doesn't look like an SMTP anymore here. You have Mailman core that's retrieves information from the database, the admin interface that fills the database, and Hyperkitty that both updates the database and reads to it and gets the message received directly from Mailman core. So to go a little bit more about Hyperkitty, Hyperkitty's goal was to bridge forms and mailing lists. So the idea is that you can actually go to the mailing list or the UI, and it would behave as if you were on any forums. So you could basically start a new thread on a mailing list that you've not subscribed to, and not get the emails about this mailing list. You can go to the UI, start a conversation, just follow that conversation, and ignore everything else that's going on in the list. You can be pointed to the conversation and just reply on the list. You can reply on the UI without using your main client, and it will just work. And then it was added some of the social network features. You can actually +1 or -1 someone or a certain email. You can tag conversations so that you're able to find them back. It has one of the features that Mailman 2 did not have. It has search. You can finally search your archives and find that email that was sent 2 years ago and that you know it was sent, we already discussed that point, and you can actually find it back now. It also has some interesting statistics about the mailing list itself. So it gives you It gives you a number of emails per day over the last 30 days. So when you want to kick off a discussion, it gives you an idea of what are the chances that you're actually going to get an answer. It also gives you the most active people, so that gives you an idea of who is going to likely to reply, and is it a bot or is it a person, these kind of things. So it's actually being run by the Fedora project, so if you want to just see how it looks, you can see it at list.federaproject.org. So I think that covers it. We now have account system, authentication, we can host our project and we can discuss about it. So do you have any questions left? Yeah.
Would you compare Pagure and GitLab feature-wise?
So how would I compare Pagure and GitLab feature-wise? Pagure is probably lacking some of the feature, let's be honest on that. Pagure was started about 2 years ago now, and as one main developer, myself, and a community of contributors, which are doing a very good job, but under spare time. GitLab has a company behind it, which I assume is a little bit more than one person and a community of contributors. So, yeah, Pagure definitely probably lacks some of the features from GitLab, and from GitHub. On the other side, we're evolving very quickly. There is a release of Pagure most of the time I do at least one release a month. And we have had people that have been working hard on it, pushing new features. So it really changes fast, and I'm very open for RFEs and even more open for pull requests, of course. So yeah, I can't really give an idea of how much feature we're lacking, how much feature we have. I do think we have things that they don't have, and they definitely have things that we don't have.
So you don't have any kind of comparison?
So I didn't do that myself. I know that. So when I was saying that Pagure is strongly dedicated to self-hosting, we already have a few Pagure instances in the wild that we don't manage. There is one from the hackerspace in Brno actually, which has apparently nothing to do with Red Hat. So the hackerspace in Brno folks learned about Pagure by themselves and decided it was cool and deployed it. I've heard about a couple of companies deploying it, and there is the community which is behind notabug.org that is currently running a forge using GOG, so the Golang GitHub-like. And they are not entirely happy with GOG, so they are looking to move away from it. And they did an entire spreadsheet comparisons of the different solutions available, GUT, GitLab. I'm not sure Calicia was in there, but Pagure got into that. And apparently their choice is going for Pagure. So I don't have exactly the entire table in mind, but there were a number of features that made Pagure appealing to them more than GitLab was. It might have to do with Python, it might have to do with managing the thing in the long term, but I wouldn't want to go into trolling Ruby right now. Sure.
Why did you decide to start Pagure from scratch rather than going with one of the existing solutions like GitLab or even Track with extra modules to handle additional features or anything else?
So the question is, why do we decided to go from Pagure from scratch instead of using GitLab? So I have to go back to the genesis of Pagure, basically. It originally started as something which I wanted to play with Python and Git and see what kind of libraries are available and how do they perform and what we can do with it. And when you want to play around with something, you need to have some kind of project that you want to build around. So my first went to, I want to do a cgit like in Python, and it was just a pet project. I spent a couple of weeks on it, and I was able to display commits to the commit tree, the commit itself. I was able to do basic pull requests. Not everything was perfectly working, but the basics was there. And we then had the problem in Fedora itself of we wanted to have more people contributing to the range engineering part of the community. And that implied having a place where people can discuss around features and pull requests. And GitHub was not an option. GitHub was just out of the plate. But that meant it was something that we had to host internally, or in the Fedora infrastructure, I mean. And GitLab has been trying to get into Fedora for a few years. There has been, at least that I know, 2 Google Summer of Code dedicated to packaging GitLab to actually be able to deploy it at one point, because one of the requirements of the Fedora infrastructure is that things have to be packaged as RPM. And therefore, GitLab is just not available as an RPM in Fedora or EPO. So one of the problems of GitLab is it's a huge pile of Ruby gems, and managing the dependencies in Ruby is a little bit of a tough and unpleasant work. I apologize for any Ruby person in the room, which makes basically packaging GitLab, I mean, there's been years of trying to get GitLab package, and that never succeeded. So we were left with projects like Calicia. There was also Fabricator that was on the roadmap. But I actually discussed with the Calicia upstream at PyCon a couple of years ago, and they are very, very strongly dedicated to review requests, so it's a little bit like Gerrit, but much less about project hosting. So ticketing system was something that they had in the mind, but something which was like long way down the roadmap. So maybe they will come with a ticket feature if someone comes up to it, but it's not a priority for them, and it wasn't their use case. So at the end, we had a prototype of Pagure that was kind of working. We had GitLab that wasn't packageable. There was Fabricator and Calicia that don't really have our use case. So we got a green light to go with Pagure, and was like, okay, let's do it. And that's basically the genesis of Pagure.
What license does it distribute?
The question is which license is Pagure in? It's a GPL license. I believe version 2. It's not even a GPL. It might have been smart, but we were nice. So you can host it, you can have your own modifications and redistribute them or not. That's what the A, not using the A grants you, basically. More questions, more RFEs, more Rotten Tomato, flowers? Well, thank you then.
Why you didn't go for GitLab, but you mentioned Fabricator, but you didn't really say why you didn't choose that.
One of the things of Fabricator is I really don't like the UI. And it's like Calicia. The use case is really much about reviewing changes. I think Fabricator has a little bit of ticketing.
Yeah, you can use the task section
for tickets. But I don't think if it has documentations or even code hosting.
Code hosting, yes.
It does?
Because in KDE we're moving to Fabricator. All in. So.
Yeah, one of my main problems with Fabricator is specifically the UI.
Okay.
I just don't like it.
For functionality, it was fine.
For functionality, yeah. We have a Fabricator instance running already, and so I was very much like, I did this prototype, Reliance Engineering was looking, I basically look at the different options, and they were like, okay, we're going for Pagure, so fine for me. But yeah, I did not myself did the comparison between Fabricator. I can say that I'm always lost when it comes to the UI. I'm always like, what does it do and what is it, and why does it not want as I want it to work? But that's it's okay. Yeah, I know that the Calicia guys were very strongly in favor of pull request. Not really much at that time, at least, not much into ticketing and hosting. Fabricator does a few things, but I don't know how easy it would have been to move from track to Fabricator or this kind of things.
Bingo, do you have some time to sit down and talk about Pagure migration of the different ambassadors and functional instances and so on?
Yeah, I'm going to go for lunch at one point, but I don't have lunch yet. So I don't know if you want to eat, if you have already eaten or if you want to eat.
No, I haven't.
I'm having a problem that I thought I had another conference that I wanted to attend.
Well, we can make it
That's the thing. You are only allowed to well, there can be direct. There reference diagrams. I'm not sure if it's something here. I like the effective way the table every check. For example, you're not allowed to move the news directly from viewer to proof. Something cannot be expanded before it was proved. Okay, that's well, that's probably something that is enforcing the policy, but you would have to enforce it. Yeah. So what does it do? You can't be a citizen. Okay. The thing is, like, we have, for example, for the expenses, we have Transco, which is a group, plus this one person, which is like a couple of but I would just add that person.
See, so now you can see the larger one.
Okay.
This match. Just like it's a transparency. It's all using this fun stuff that you guys can show.
Should be all you have the Lenovo.
I have an iPad actually, but it'll be okay.
Oh wow, we had some problems with Macs.
Yeah, I have to use VGA.
Okay.
I had a problem yesterday at the workshop, so I already debugged it.
That's fine. So it's a bit different than workshop in the time. Do you plan to just speak or have the questions at the end?
I think I'll have. I should have time for questions at the end.
So it's like 40 minutes plus 10.
Yeah.
And I will start giving you the signs, like 10 minutes, 5 minutes, what.
Great.
And so far. Just remember, the microphone here is not going to be here, it's just for the recording.
Okay.
And please repeat the questions.
Will do.
Just publish the slides in the end, but not collecting them.
Okay, I can do that.
Do you want the clicker for the slides?
No, I'll just click on mine.
Keep this out of the raw standard. We're going down. Yeah, exactly. I'm going back to my hotel.
I don't know how we were able to fit there.